My brother told me I'd always come second, so I let him die first to prove him right. My parents spent years hoping for a baby of their own, and when it never happened, they adopted me and convinced themselves they were complete. Then Noah came along. When he was 7, he tried to sell me back to the orphanage, and my parents just laughed when they found the listing. That's when I knew I was never really their son. I was just the placeholder until the real one showed up. It started small. Noah locked me out of the house after school and watched from the window, mouthing, "No orphans allowed," while I waited on the porch for hours before my parents got home. By 4th grade, I was finding "return to orphanage" stickers on everything I owned, but my parents just said Noah was going through a phase and doesn't really mean it. But that phase never ended. When I was 16 and finally had my first girlfriend, Noah saw his opportunity. At my parents' party, he kept refilling my cup until I blacked out. I woke up in the backyard nude and covered in vomit with "orphan trash" written across my chest in Sharpie. Noah had taken dozens of photos and showed them to our whole school and my parents, claiming I'd done it to myself for attention, throwing around terms like attachment disorder he'd Googled about adopted kids. They believed him, sent me to therapy for self-harm, and my girlfriend never spoke to me again. But the worst came when I turned 18 and finally saved enough to fly to Phoenix to meet my biological mother. She'd agreed to meet at a coffee shop, and I spent the whole flight practicing what I'd say. But when I knocked on her door, she took one look at me and started screaming, saying she knew what I'd done before slamming the door in my face. I flew home confused and broken, and when I pulled into the driveway, Noah was waiting for me with a huge grin. "Told her you just got out of prison," he said. "Called her last week, said you needed money for your drug habit." That's when something inside me finally shattered. But then I met Haley, and for the first time in my life, someone actually chose me. After 3 years together, she got pregnant, and we were planning our whole future. Moved into my apartment, painted the spare room blue. We even got a crib. I'd never been happier. I went to my parents' house to get my old baby clothes from the attic, where Noah still lived at 23, and walked into his room to ask for help with the boxes. That's when I found them in his bed, Noah on top of Haley. He looked up with that familiar grin and said, "I've been screwing her since day one. You were just keeping my son warm for me." I blacked out, and when I came to, my hands were around his throat and his nose was sideways, blood everywhere, while my parents pulled me off screaming that I was an animal. Noah was spitting blood through his smile. As they threw me out, he called after me, "You'll always come second." The charges got dropped, but my parents didn't drop their decision to disown me that night, and I lost Haley, the baby, my family, everything. I has no one. I stayed gone for 9 years after that, and somewhere in the middle I met Sarah, who made me forget I was ever anyone's second choice. We'd been together for 4 years, and were laughing about the crooked roses on her niece's birthday cake when my phone rang with an unknown number. Her voice hit like it never left. "Your brother is dying of kidney failure, and you're the only match." The same people who spent 18 years telling me I was good for nothing now needed the one thing only I could give. Perfect. I'll show them exactly how good I am for nothing. I walked into that hospital room like a savior, and found Noah looking small and yellow, hooked to beeping machines while my parents jumped up with tears and apologies. 9 years of silence evaporated because they needed something from me. I sat beside Noah, and we actually talked for the first time in years, remembering the fort we built in the backyard before everything went wrong, the time we snuck Dad's beer and both threw up, even laughing about how we used to race bikes down the hill behind our house. We spent the whole day like that, pretending we were different people, and when visiting hours were ending, I took his hand and said, "Let's forget about all those years, forget about Haley and everything else, and just be brothers again after the surgery." The hope in his eyes was beautiful. The morning of surgery, I walked into Noah's room wearing my regular clothes, and he was sitting up in bed glowing with relief while nurses prepped him. He grabbed my hand like we were kids again, babbling about fresh starts, and I let him hold on just long enough to feel safe before pulling away. "You're right," I said. "I'll always be second. That's why you're dying first." He stared at my jeans and jacket, realizing I'd never intended to save him, and the machines went wild as he started screaming. My mother flew at me screaming about family duty while Dad grabbed me, shouting how they saved me. I just smiled. "I'm nothing, remember? Can't donate what doesn't exist." Then I left. Noah spent 6 months on the waiting list, calling me every day, until the calls stopped, and I knew. At the funeral, I stood in the back watching them lower him into the ground, saw Haley holding a toddler who was Noah's mirror image. The same cruel eyes, same smirk, even at 3 years old. Haley started toward me, but I walked away. She made her bed 6 feet deep. Noah finally found the one thing he couldn't take. Turned out it was the only thing that could have saved him.